There's a quiet shift in love that people rarely talk about. You didn't walk away to punish her or get a reaction. You let go because something within said enough, trying to prove your worth enough chasing. It was time to protect your peace and return to yourself. And that's when it started to shift. Not instantly, but steadily, she felt the difference. Not because you vanished, but because you realigned you weren't running. You were choosing clarity, and that choice, it carried a strength that she didn't expect. She didn't feel it when you were always there. She felt it when you let go with calm conviction, when you stopped needing her to define your value. That's when she saw you clearly, the man beneath the effort, steady and whole. This video is for the man who didn't stop caring. He just started caring about himself a little more. A man who, like the Stoics, knows that what's real doesn't need to be forced. Let's talk about why she finally saw your worth only after you stopped trying to prove it. When you stopped reaching, she started remembering number one when you stopped reaching. She started remembering there was a moment, maybe subtle, when you stopped reaching out. No more long messages, no more checking in first, and it was in that silence that something unexpected happened. She started remembering not just the good moments, but the man behind them. The one who used to be there but wasn't. Any more that contrast, it cut through her routine, louder than words ever could. Like Stoicism teaches, when you stop reacting, you start revealing. See, she never expected you to let go. She thought you'd always be there, always trying. But when you didn't chase, when you didn't beg for her time or her clarity, she was left with something far more powerful than your presence, your absence. That's when the memories hit harder. Not the drama, not the ending, but your calm, the way you laughed with her, the way you made her feel, seeing the quiet strength in how you carried yourself even when things weren't perfect. That's what began to echo in her mind when you weren't around to remind her. And that's the twist, isn't it? Most people think letting go means erasing someone, but in reality, it's your decision to not hold on that makes them finally see what they took for granted. It's not the message you never sent, it's the fact that you didn't need to send it. That stoic strength, not needing to be loud to be heard. Imagine her scrolling through old photos late at night. She sees your smile and it doesn't feel like nostalgia. It feels like a realization. Because now she's not comparing you to someone else. She's comparing them to you. And they fall short because you were real grounded patient, but not weak present, but not dependent. And now she's the one wondering if she misread the moment. If your silence was distance or discipline. If you still care, or if she waited too long to figure out what she had. That's what happens when a man stops reaching. Not because he's bitter, but because he's better. And when you become better, not to win her back, but to win yourself back. That's when she starts to feel what she never expected, the weight of your absence and the love she only truly recognized once you let go. Let that sink in and ask yourself, have you been trying to hold on or are you ready to let her remember you in peace? Leave a comment and let me know what part of this hits home for you. Or just type, I've let go to grow. Let's talk about it. Number 2, your calm became louder then. Your calm became louder than her doubts. Her doubts, she might have expected anger, sadness, maybe one last plea. But what she got was calm, grounded, silent composure, and that calmness, it challenged her doubts. Why didn't you fight for her? Why weren't you unraveling like she imagined? Because you were centered. You had learned to master your response, not just for her, but for yourself. You didn't chase, you didn't argue, you didn't try to convince her of your worth, and in that unfamiliar silence, she felt something stir. Something deeper than guilt. It was uncertainty, the kind that creeps in when a woman realizes the emotional grip she thought she had on you is gone when you step back with grace instead of chaos. You stop being predictable, and that's where the shift begins. It wasn't that you stopped caring overnight, but you stopped showing it in ways that cost you your dignity. You stopped measuring your value through her affection. You started choosing yourself, that kind of detachment. The kind rooted in calm, not resentment, is what Stoicism is all about. Not pretending you don't feel, but having the courage to feel. Without being enslaved by emotion, she didn't expect that she expected the man who once stayed up worrying. The man who over-explained the one who would have sent one last message just to make peace. But now that man was gone, not bitter, just wiser. You weren't running away, you were standing still. And ironically, that stillness made her want to come closer again. I've seen it happen time and time again. A woman walks away thinking she has the upper hand until the man she left behind stops reaching, and that quiet moment when you no longer orbit her mood, that's when her emotions begin to shift. Not out of guilt, but because your strength quietly exposed her uncertainty. So remember this, you don't have to raise your voice to be heard when you remain composed. When your energy speaks of self-respect, you say more than any plea ever could, because when your calm becomes louder than her doubts, she doesn't just remember you. She starts to fall for you all over again. You let go, but kept your standards, number 3. You let go, but kept your standards letting go. Didn't mean settling, you didn't twist your values to keep her around. You didn't compromise your self-respect just to hold on to someone emotionally uncertain. No, what you did was rare. You walked away with grace not out of bitterness, but out of principle. You stopped choosing chaos, and that became unforgettable. See, most people assume that walking away means anger, resentment, or defeat. But yours was different. Yours came from alignment. You weren't interested in convincing someone of your worth. You were interested in protecting the peace you had built within, and even if she didn't say it, that decision hit her. Because the man who walks away with his standards intact leaves a different kind of silence behind, one that speaks louder than any apology or final word. She noticed it in small ways. The way you didn't reach out after things ended, the way you didn't watch her stories or linger in her digital orbit. You didn't unfollow in a dramatic gesture, you just stopped feeding energy into a space where you no longer felt seen. And instead of falling apart, you built quietly. You poured into your habits, your body, your craft, your peace, that shift. It wasn't a performance, it was a return to form. And that's what Stoicism teaches, that your energy is yours to protect. That true strength lies not in reacting, but in choosing your response with intention. You didn't walk away because you stopped feeling. You walked away because you started honoring what you feel. And in doing so, you showed her something different. Something she might have never experienced before, a man who can love deeply but refuses to lose himself in the process, that contrast. It lingers because while she might have expected drama or desperation, what she got instead was stillness, not the kind that hides pain, but the kind that reflects wisdom, the kind that says, I loved you, but not more than I respect myself. And somewhere along the way, that memory began to rewrite itself in her mind. She stopped thinking about how things ended and started remembering who you were when they did. Calm, clear, unshaken. That's when it starts to sink in that the man she left didn't collapse. He rose quietly, and the more she sits with that, the more she starts to feel what she never expected to regret. Wrapped in admiration, she fell in love not just with the man you were when you held her close, but with the one you became when you let her go. Time didn't fade you, it defined you, number 4. Time didn't fade you, it defined you. Some people expect time to erase you, but for her, it had the opposite effect as the days passed. Your absence carved a shape she couldn't fill. You weren't texting. You weren't watching her stories. You weren't trying to be seen. And in that quiet evolution, you became something else defined, not forgotten. You see, when a man detaches, not out of anger, but out of self-respect, it shifts something. At first, she might have thought you'd circle back like before, that maybe after a few days or weeks, she'd see your name light up her screen. But this time was different. You didn't disappear in a storm, you left. Like still water pulling back from the shore, no begging, no closure speech. Just a calm withdrawal that spoke louder than any goodbye ever could. As the weeks passed, the silence didn't feel like peace to her. It became weight, because while she continued with her life, something subtle kept echoing. Your lack of presence didn't feel like distance, it felt like strength. She realized you weren't trying to provoke a reaction or play a game. You were genuinely done seeking. And that clarity, that grounded restraint, that's what left a mark. Stoicism teaches us to let go of what we cannot control and to return to the self. And that's exactly what you did. You stopped checking your phone for a reply. You stopped wondering how she felt. You returned your focus inward to your own rhythm, your own purpose, while she was still caught up in impressions and reactions. You were becoming someone harder to replace. And here's the truth: most people don't expect when you stop chasing someone who is unsure about you. Time doesn't make you disappear. It gives your absence room to speak. It allows your silence to echo every day. She didn't hear from you. The image of you grew clearer, not fuzzier. It's not because you were trying to be unforgettable, it's because you finally let your peace speak louder than your need to be understood. Now, when she thinks of you, she doesn't just remember what you said. She remembers how you made her feel safe, grounded, present. And that feeling isn't easily replaced by someone new. She didn't fall in love with the man who tried to prove his worth. She fell in love with the man who walked away without losing his. So no time didn't fade. It revealed you. It separated the noise from the truth, and what's left now is a version of you that doesn't need validation, doesn't need to be chased, and doesn't need to look back. And that is exactly why she started looking at you differently. You chose growth over closure. Number 5, you chose growth over closure. You didn't obsess over a final conversation. You didn't send long paragraphs begging for clarity. Instead, you grew. You started focusing on your health, your discipline, your craft. And while she waited for a reaction, you became a version of yourself she never got to know. That's the irony. She fell for who you became after she left. And here's the deeper truth: letting go wasn't weakness. It was wisdom, because you understood something she didn't expect. Not every story needs a dramatic ending. Sometimes the most powerful response is none at all. That's where Stoicism quietly came into play. You accepted what was outside your control. You didn't beg for what wasn't freely given. Instead, you turned inward. You trained your mind like you trained your body, replacing overthinking with discipline and emotional chaos with clarity. While she might have been scrolling through your old messages, waiting for you to break the silence you were breaking, old patterns, you were waking up earlier, hitting the gym harder, showing up for yourself in ways you never did before. She was expecting the man she left behind. But that man doesn't live here anymore. And maybe she started to notice it in the smallest ways. Your absence on social media, the quiet confidence in your new photos, the way people started speaking about your presence with respect. She felt that shift even if she didn't say it out loud. That's the thing about detachment when it's real. It echoes louder than any words you could have said. Let me give you an example. Imagine she opens her phone late at night, half expecting a notification from you, but there's nothing. No missed call, no message, just stillness. And instead of relief, she feels something unexpected: regret, because she realized the man who used to need her doesn't anymore, and not out of bitterness, but out of growth. That kind of transformation is unforgettable, because you didn't just move on, you leveled up. You became a man she never had the patience to meet, and now, ironically, she's drawn to that version of you. The one who didn't chase, who didn't beg, who didn't collapse under heartbreak, the one who mastered himself. So if you're there now, somewhere in that space between silence and becoming, stay on that path, stay rooted. You don't need closure to create clarity. You don't need her words to find your worth. Keep building. Keep evolving, and let the man you're becoming speak louder than any goodbye ever could. Because in the end, that's the version. She won't forget the man who chose growth over closure. And now I want you to pause and really think about this. What kind of man are you becoming? In her absence, are you chasing closure, or are you creating a new chapter she never saw coming? Growth isn't about revenge. It's about becoming so grounded, so elevated, that the old version of you becomes unrecognizable even to her. If any part of this hit home, I'd love to hear. Your thoughts, drop a comment below, sharing what part spoke to you the most, or simply type, I'm choosing growth over closure. Let's keep going because the next part reveals what happens when your detachment starts to echo louder than your presence ever did. She couldn't replace your presence, number 6. She couldn't replace your presence. Maybe she tried to move on to fill the space you left behind, but something kept pulling her back. Not to your face, but to your energy. You weren't just another guy texting good morning. You had depth, stillness, and direction. And once a woman experiences a man like that, he's not easily replaced. She might have gone out more. Maybe she downloaded the apps, entertained new conversations, even told herself he was just a phase. But the more she tried to substitute what she lost, the more she realized your presence wasn't something you could just swap out because it wasn't about gestures or charm. It was about the way you carried yourself, the way you listened, without rushing to fix, the way you gave space without disappearing. That emotional stability, that sense of quiet leadership, it left an imprint, and not everyone can offer that. You see, Stoicism teaches that the rarest kind of power is restraint. A man who doesn't react to every emotion, who doesn't crumble under absence, who doesn't chase to prove worth. That was you. While she expected a man to unravel after she left, you became even more composed. You didn't post cryptic stories or fish for her attention. You didn't try to fill your time with distractions or shallow replacements. Instead, you moved deeper into your purpose. You became more intentional with your time. And in that silence, she started to feel your value more clearly than when you were right beside her. That's when the shift happened. Not because you changed to make her miss you, but because you stayed grounded in who you were. While other men tried to impress her with noise, you stood out with stillness. And every time she met someone new, there was this quiet comparison happening in the back of her mind. Why doesn't he feel like that? Why can't I relax around him the way I did before she fell in love with you? Not when you were trying, but when you had already let go. When your absence revealed the depth of your presence, when she realized you weren't trying to be remembered. Because men like you are unforgettable. Number 7, you stopped explaining yourself. You stopped explaining yourself no more, justifying your choices, no more rewarding your thoughts just to be received the right way. You stopped trying to win her approval or soften your truth to avoid being misunderstood because deep down you knew if someone needs endless explanations to see your value, they were never really seeing you in the first place. And so you made a quiet decision to let your actions speak instead of your words. Not to punish her, not to play a game, but to protect something far more important. Your inner peace. There's a deep kind of strength in letting go of the need to be understood. Most people will exhaust themselves trying to clarify, over-explain, or rewrite their intentions, just to be seen the right way, but not you. You started to embody the calm that Stoicism teaches, a calm rooted in self-rust, like Epictetus said. If someone speaks badly of you, do not defend yourself against the accusations, but reply, you obviously don't know me very well. That mindset, it changes everything. You didn't vanish, you simply removed yourself from the emotional courtroom she kept dragging you into, and while she expected a reaction, a plea, a justification, maybe even a last-ditch effort, you offered none. You chose stillness over noise. You allowed her to sit with the discomfort of your absence, instead of cushioning it with your explanations, and here's where the twist happens. She started remembering the man you were, not because you kept reminding her, but because your silence made her revisit everything she took for granted. She fell in love with who you became once you stopped performing, once you stopped defending, once you chose to walk in quiet confidence instead of loud desperation. That's what real masculine presence is. You let go without burning bridges, you didn't need to be cruel, but you also didn't shrink to make her comfortable. And in doing so, you gave her the rare experience of a man who leads with clarity, not chaos, a man who doesn't explain himself to be validated, but who lives in a way that makes explanations unnecessary. And that contrast, it left a deeper impression than any words ever could number. 8, you disappeared from her. You disappeared from her phone, but not her mind phone, but not her mind. Your name stopped appearing on her screen, but it started echoing in her mind. The lack of your presence only highlighted how different things felt. Not worse, just emptier because you weren't sending "I miss you" texts you were living, and that contrast created a tension she couldn't ignore. You see, a man doesn't need to shout his worth. He shows it through stillness, and when you stopped showing up on her phone, it wasn't because you didn't care. It was because you finally cared more about yourself. That's a shift most women don't expect. They're used to men chasing, explaining, trying to stay relevant. But you did something different. You followed what Stoicism reminds us to act with intention. Not desperation. You weren't disappearing out of spite. You were reclaiming your peace, your energy, your direction every day. She didn't hear from you became a new space where reflection grew. At first, she probably assumed you'd reach out. She may have even tested the waters posting something, watching your stories, dropping hints, but the silence continued, not cold, not forced, just grounded. And that unsettled her because for the first time she realized you weren't lingering. You were gone. Maybe she picked up her phone. Late at night, scrolled through old messages wondering how things got so quiet, wondering why you hadn't reached out. Why your presence, which once felt so consistent, now felt like a ghost she couldn't touch. And that's the part that stuck with her. It wasn't just your words. She missed it was your energy, the way you made her feel safe, seen, and centered. You didn't have to remind her what she lost. Your absence did that for you. That's what Stoic composure creates, a silent kind of power. You stopped feeding the connection, and without your effort, the dynamic collapsed. And in that stillness, something happened. She started remembering the man you were and the man you were becoming. Not through arguments or explanations, but through quiet contrast. You weren't reacting. You were rising, you weren't available, you were evolving. And that's when it hit her. She didn't fall in love with the man who stayed glued to her screen. She fell in love with the man who stopped chasing, stopped explaining, and started living, the man who left without bitterness, but came back in her thoughts stronger than ever. Now, I want you to take a moment and really think about this. What does it mean to truly let go without losing yourself? Because this wasn't just about pulling away. It was about stepping fully into your power, into your peace. That shift, subtle but undeniable, is what changed everything. So before we move forward, I'd love to hear from you. Has there been a time when your absence spoke louder than your presence? When your silence wasn't about walking away from her, but about walking back to yourself? Drop your thoughts in the comments or simply type, "I choose peace over pursuit." Let's keep this real. Let's keep it honest. And now let's dive into what happened next. Number 9, she realized you never needed her. You chose her. Needed her? You chose her. This is the moment clarity hits you. Didn't cling, you didn't beg, you chose her when you didn't have to. And now, with distance between you, she can finally feel the difference. The men who need her feel heavy. You felt light because your life never depended on her affection. That realization haunting because now she sees it wasn't desperation that brought you close. It was choice. And that choice, coming from a man who stood firmly on his own 2 feet, hit different, while others tried to win her through flattery or need you, brought presence while others reached out to fill their emotional void. You brought wholeness. You didn't chase her when she pulled away. You didn't spiral when she became distant instead. You held your peace like it was sacred. Because to you, it was, you see, there's a deep kind of magnetism in a man who doesn't need anyone to complete him. And she feels that now the calm, steady energy you carried wasn't just appealing. It was rare. It made her feel safe. But at the time, she may have confused your calm for indifference. It wasn't. It was inner strength. And now looking back, she's beginning to understand. Stoicism teaches us that true freedom comes when you no longer need what can be taken away. You live that your love wasn't a request. It was a gift. You didn't demand reciprocation. You didn't try to force outcomes. You simply offered her a space in your life, with no pressure attached. And now that you've stepped back, she's finally noticing what made you stand out. She's starting to remember how easy it felt to be around you. Not because you gave her everything she wanted, but because your energy wasn't rooted in insecurity, you weren't trying to earn her. You were showing her what life beside a grounded man looks like. That kind of clarity only comes after you're gone. That's when the contrast becomes undeniable. She fell in love not just with who you were, but with how you made her feel free, unpressured yet deeply valued. And now that she's had time to compare, to reflect, to feel the absence of that steady energy, she's not just missing you, she's realizing she once had something she didn't fully understand. And it's haunting her not because she lost a man who needed her, but because she let go of a man who never did. She fell for the man who could walk away. Number 10, she fell for the man who could walk away because every woman deep down respects the man who doesn't need her to complete him. The one who can love but also let go. That kind of man is rare. That kind of man is you. And that's why she fell. Not when you held on, but when you stopped. At first, she may have mistaken your detachment for indifference. She assumed you'd circle back like others had. She expected the usual pattern, the apologies, the explanations, the desperate attempts to win her back. But that moment never came because you weren't operating from lack. You weren't trying to control the outcome. You had already made peace with the possibility of losing her. And that peace, that grounded stillness, is exactly what set you apart. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. You didn't need to slam any doors. You simply removed your energy from a place where it was no longer respected, and in doing so, you revealed a truth most men are too afraid to accept. Real love doesn't require convincing. It requires clarity, and clarity sometimes means walking away with your dignity intact. That's where the Stoic mindset lives. Not in pretending you don't care, but in accepting what you cannot control. You didn't leave because you stopped loving her. You left because you started loving yourself more deeply. You honored your own standards. You refused to sacrifice your peace for temporary closeness. And that's when she felt the shift. Not in your words, but in your absence. Imagine her scrolling through her messages late at night, realizing the last thing you said was calm, final, and respectful. Not angry, not needy. Just clear. That's the kind of man she couldn't replace, the kind who knew when to stay, but also when to step back. You didn't chase her down. You didn't make her your project. You became your own. And in time, that image of you, steady, evolving, untouchable, started to echo in her mind. She didn't fall for the version of you who begged to be chosen. She fell for the one who had the courage to walk away and never looked back. So here we conclusion are at the end of a story that didn't need a dramatic ending to be powerful. Because the truth is, she didn't fall in love with the version of you that tried to hold everything together. She fell for the man who had the strength to let go. The man who didn't need to control, didn't need to chase, and didn't need to explain himself to be seen. She fell. When your presence became defined by peace, not pursuit. And maybe that's the real lesson here, that love doesn't always arrive in the noise. Sometimes it arrives after silence, after clarity, after you stop proving and start becoming. What she truly felt wasn't just your absence. It was your growth, your calm, your refusal to lower your standards just to be loved. Temporarily, if there's anything Stoicism has taught us, it's this: you don't cling to what's uncertain, you align with what's true, and sometimes the most powerful decision a man can make is to walk away with dignity. If any part of this spoke to you, I want to hear it. Drop a comment below. Tell me what resonated most, or just type "I've let go to grow." I'll be reading every one of them. And if you found value in this, give the video a like. It helps more men find the message they need to hear. And before you go, check out the videos on screen. Now they dive even deeper into this journey of detachment, clarity, and becoming the man she never expected to lose. Until next time, stay grounded, stay growing, and protect your peace.